Everybody, and thank you to the U46 STEM program and Elgin High School. It's the best time of year. It's always great to be back for the National Biodiversity Teach-In, and it's especially great for all of you because now it's turtle time. So my name is Jordan Gray. I'm the External Relations Manager for the Turtle Survival Alliance. And by the way, it's not just National Biodiversity Teach-In Day. Today here in the US is Groundhog Day, where if you don't know about this tradition, in Pennsylvania, they bring out a groundhog. If it sees its shadow, spring is on the way. If it sees its shadow, there's still longer days of winter ahead. If it doesn't see its shadow, spring is on the way. I'm pretty sure that spring is probably just going to come when it wants to. But at Turtle Survival Alliance and where I'm at now, it's Ground Turtle Day. Okay, that's how we see it. So let's get started with this presentation. It's something that I've been a part of since its inception, and it's really neat. And it doesn't just focus on the United States, it's really a global issue. But I'm going to focus very much on what we are doing with this program here in the United States right now. So let me go ahead and share my screen. We'll go to a little slideshow from the beginning. All right, there we go. So as you can see, that is a picture of me less bearded. It's winter time, it's cold. I am Survival Alliance in sunny, warm Charleston, South Carolina, right along the coast. It's a beautiful place if you've never been, and it's a wonderful place for turtles. And today I'm going to be talking about our strategy of confiscation to conservation. And I want you to retain the image that you're seeing right here in your head. Okay, this beautiful image of a spotted turtle, a species that's native to the eastern United States and the Great Lakes regions of United States and southern Canada, and this habitat behind it. There's nothing better than a spotted turtle, or really any turtle for that matter, in its native habitat. I have a spotted turtle population right near my home. I was out there last week and I was able to find one of the spotted turtles that I hadn't seen since 2021. Just a gorgeous specimen that I have affectionately named Taurus. If you want to check Taurus out, go to at Turtle Survival on your various social media platforms and check out a reel of him. So let's get started with who the Turtle Survival Alliance is, because you might not have heard of us before. First off, we are committed to a vision of zero turtle extinctions. And we're made up of a diverse assemblage of organizations, institutions, and individuals, like all these amazing people you see in this photo here, that have a passion for saving turtles. Together with our partners, the Turtle Survival Alliance is the largest and most comprehensive tortoise and freshwater turtle organization in the world. And mainly, strategic partnerships are our core strength. Plus, again, look at all these people and many, many more across the world. Really, really extraordinary people. Speaking of around the world, let's look at where we work and what we do. So you can see from all these green shaded countries, we do work all over the world. Let's go through the list from Bangladesh to Belize to Brazil to Cambodia and Colombia, Egypt, India, Indonesia, Kenya, Madagascar, Malaysia, Mexico, Myanmar, South Sudan, Uganda, the United States, and Vietnam. And what do we do in all those countries? Well, we do a lot. It's all extremely comprehensive. But if you look at the bullets here, this is really breaks it down. So we manage assurance colonies, which are kind of like little arks for turtles. So should they ever become extinct in the wild, these are places where we know that the species will at least be preserved. We also do conservation breeding, such as at those assurance colonies. And that's where we breed more of these endangered animals to once again ensure that not only they survive, but hopefully we can put them back onto the landscape in idyllic natural habitats where they belong. We do education and outreach, just like today for National Biodiversity Teach-In. We do advocacy. So this is maybe there's a bill that a state or even the federal agency is looking at passing to help turtles. We help out with advocacy campaigns to help push those type of bills or measures or regulations through because it's all for the turtles and it's all about their protection and their survival. We do Head Start and reintroduction. Head Start is growing animals to a larger size so that when we do reintroduce them, they'll have less susceptibility to being predated upon by predators. We do rescue and rehabilitation, habitat protection, and field research and monitoring. And a number of those facets of what we do are going to be talked about in today's presentation of confiscation to conservation. So let's look at our Turtle Survival Alliance three-pronged approach. So restoring populations in the wild, first and foremost, this is our vision. We want to see turtles on the landscape now and forever. So hashtag turtles forever. Secure species in captivity through assurance colonies. And I told you about that just a minute ago. And this is super important. Build the capacity to restore, secure, and conserve species within their range country. And why is that so important? Is because when we want to do reintroduction projects, having those assurance colonies, having teams that are ready to release them, or before that, to hatch them, grow them, teams that are ready to do field research after the turtles are released, and then engaging all the local communities. Because really, when it comes down to it, the survival of turtles and tortoises really depends on the communities, community engagement, and communities seeing turtles as a vital part of the landscape and of their community. We know that turtles and tortoises and humans live in the same places at the same time all across the world. And so making sure we are able to engage and tackle that aspect is super important to what we do. So today we're going to talk about confiscation to conservation and take a look at that image of turtles in a box. And those are actually box turtles. Now, does it mean that a turtle that's called a box turtle should live in the box? No, absolutely not. The reason that they're called box turtles is because they have a hinge on their lower shell or plastron that can actually close them up like a box. The reason that you see these turtles in this box is that this is a confiscated shipment of box turtles that was en route to a foreign country from JFK Airport in New York. But where do they really belong? These turtles belong in the wild, just like this super happy little eastern box turtle in its native habitat in the eastern United States. So let's start with the problem. Look at this image. I mean, this is, well, it's disgusting. And I'm not saying that because the water is all dirty. I'm saying because these are spotted or Sierra box turtles from Mexico. They are protected in Mexico. You cannot ship these animals out legally from Mexico. Yet here's a tub full of them. And this tub full of them is in Hong Kong, which is an island. It's part of China. So these turtles were smuggled out of Mexico to Hong Kong, and oftentimes Hong Kong acts as a terminus or the nexus for trade going out to countries like Indonesia and Malaysia and China and South Korea and Taiwan, or even then all the way to Europe. So all of these turtles likely will never see their home again. I mean, I can pretty much guarantee that these turtles will never see their forested woodlands in the beautiful Sierra Occidental of Western Mexico again. And so that is why I say this is a disgusting image, because wild turtles belong in the wild. So here's the problem. So let's start at the beginning. You have this idyllic stream. And I've used the word idyllic a couple times because, well, that's where turtles live. They live in just these beautiful habitats. They're serene, not just for the turtles, but for us too. I love to go into these habitats and just be immersed in them. And this is a North American wood turtle. It is a species that right now is proposed for the United States' Endangered Species Act, and their populations have declined greatly throughout their range. Now, this turtle is probably quite happy in this clear stream. It's nice rocky bottom. You can see you have the all the vegetation along the side. But what happens when somebody wants this turtle? Well, why would they want this turtle first? Well, look at it. It is absolutely gorgeous. You have these shades of salmon and orange and red and yellow. And not just that, they're a very personable turtle. And they are also commonly considered the smartest turtle in the world. Now, how do they figure that out? There's been tests done where they compare wood turtles figuring out mazes uh, along with rats and mice. Now, I think you'd have to go through all of the 353 different species of turtles out there to really figure it out. But historically, people have regarded this as the smartest turtle. So, simply put, people want these turtles as pets. And this is an image of wood turtles, which are the larger brown turtle. There's a Blandings turtle all the way up at the top of the screen, which is native to Illinois, where Elgin High School is located. And there's also eastern box turtles in here. And these are all captive turtles. You can see them feeding on tomatoes here. Now, think about this image. These turtles, sure, it looks like they're having fun. All these turtles together, and maybe they're enjoying each other's company, but typically turtles in the wild live rather solitary lives, coming together during such times as hibernation or brumation, or to feed or to get warmth from the sun. Look at this and then go back and look at this image here, okay? Which one do you think a turtle would rather be in? I know what my answer is. You may have your own opinion, but in my view, the turtle here in its wild habitat is where a turtle belongs, and that's where it is happiest. So, what happens with these turtles after it's picked up from the wild? Well, we see them go for sale, and that might be in a pet market. Very much today, those pet markets are online, they are digital. It might even be through such services as WhatsApp or other chat services. You even see it on Facebook. See people buying turtles off of Instagram through personal messages. There's forums like this where back in 2010 or 2012, this group of wild North American wood turtles was for sale. And when we get a confiscation, this is often what it looks like. You don't always see the turtles just free roaming like you did in that first box with the box turtles. Sadly, and again, I use the word disgusting, but these disgusting practices are used to bind the turtles so that they evade law enforcement personnel. This is a real photo, folks, of wood turtles that are bound by packing and duct tape so that they don't move in the boxes. But luckily, this group of wood turtles was intercepted by federal law enforcement, and so they were saved from going into that trade. And when they go into that trade, it's not just a one-time stop. They might go from one place to another, to another, to another. And that could be weeks or months or even up to a year that these turtles are in transit and just in all of these places that they just don't know where they are, what they're doing, or if you think about it, what will happen to them. Now, can we really think of what a turtle is thinking? Not really, but that's a way of at least you being able to think about what turtles go through. And this is not pennies, folks. This is a big industry. Wildlife in general is a billion-dollar industry across the world of selling wildlife, whether that be smuggled wildlife or captive bred wildlife. And what federal and state law enforcement officers are mostly after are those wild animals that are caught and smuggled into the pet trade. But law enforcement officers and Turtle Survival Alliance and our partners have been really engaged in trying to tackle this global problem. If you look at this headline here, and these do make headlines, when there is a poacher or a smuggler or a middleman or whatever you want to call it that is intercepted by law enforcement, it makes news, folks. Right here, you see Chinese national held in global $2.2 million smuggling scheme. And look at it. It says 1,500 endangered turtles from American marshes. $2.2 million off of 1,500 endangered turtles. So again, this is big money, and this is something that needs to be stopped. And that's why we're working against it. Look at this. All right, what do you see? Socks? Maybe socks that you were getting ready to put back into a drawer, all color coded, so you know that you have your black socks and you have your white socks, and maybe it looks like a Oreo cookie that you'll wear throughout the week. Well, this is a photo of turtles that are first wrapped up and then stuffed into socks so that they can be shipped internationally to try to evade, again, those law enforcement personnel. And this is not an easy task. If you can imagine, these turtles are silent. They're not barking like a dog or squawking like a parrot. They are silent, bound up in these socks, and thousands of shipments go out of the US every single day. And so being able to detect these shipments of turtles is a difficult task. So we try to give law enforcement as much tools as they can to be able to fight this problem. And that is where we come in. So let's talk about this really, really neat program that started just a few years ago. And this is a program that is within the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. What's the Association of Zoos and Aquariums? Well, if you think of most zoos and aquariums in the United States and also in Canada, they have an accreditation system to make sure that their animals healthy, that the keepers are taking good care of them and following protocols, and that there is safety for the public and the animals. And within the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, we were able to develop what's called this American Turtle Program as part of their Saving Animals from Extinction initiative. So what is SAFE? Again, I said saving animals from extinction, but let's get into it a little more. So SAFE is the flagship conservation program of the AZA, and it provides a framework to protect threatened animals that, one, builds on established recovery plans and a history of commitment, prioritizes collaboration and partnerships because there is no way to get conservation done successfully without partnerships and collaborations. And it implements strategic conservation and stakeholder engagement. What do I mean by stakeholder? Well, I'm not thinking of putting down a stake in the ground and asking your friend Jim to hold the stake for you while you put up your tent in the woods on a camping trip. What stakeholders are people or organizations that have a special interest in something. So let's say there is a creek with wood turtles. The Turtle Survival Alliance is interested in that creek with wood turtles and being able to continue that population's survival. Well, now we're a stakeholder, we're getting involved. So also a landowner, maybe the landowner lives on that creek and that creek runs through the property. Well, they're a stakeholder too in all of this. So it's really important to bring all this together. And look at this map. So this is really cool just to visualize. We know we have zoos and aquariums all over the United States, but SAFE doesn't just include zoos and aquariums. So the state SAFE also has high schools in it, it has colleges and universities in it, it has nature centers and arboretums. It even actually has a riding center, so horse riding center, which is in Tennessee as part of it. And it is spread mostly over the Midwest and eastern part of the United States, but we have some partners in the West as well. And a big reason for this is the majority of turtle species in the United States, and again, I say the majority, come from the central and eastern part of the country. Oh, by the way, in case you didn't know, the United States is the most turtle-rich country on Earth, meaning it has more species and subspecies of turtle and tortoise than any country in the world. So if you live in the United States, raise your hands, jump for joy, go pet a groundhog today or a ground turtle because this is really great that we have such a diversity in our United States. So, the SAFE program, the American Turtle Program, focuses on 5 species: the bog turtle, the spotted turtle, the Blandings turtle, the wood turtle, and the box turtle. And there's several species of box turtle, such as the eastern box turtle and the ornate or western box turtle, the Florida box turtle, the three-toed box turtle, Gulf Coast, Mexican, spotted, Yucatan. There's all these different types of box turtles that really fall under box turtle. Now, box turtles in general are not as threatened as the other species that you see here, but they are species that are continually at threat due to development, due to illegal trade, and due to other human-caused issues such as increased predation, road mortality, etc. So there are species that we really want to focus on. And for a lot of people, box turtles are the segue into turtledom. A box turtle might have been the first catalytic moment that a person had with a turtle. There's something nostalgic from our youth. I know I have tons of nostalgic memories with box turtles. All right, so let's look at our program goals. To conserve and expand wild populations of spotted bogwood blandings and box turtles, assist law enforcement efforts to protect wild turtles, and develop a pathway for confiscated turtles to contribute to effective conservation efforts. Again, remember going back to TSA's three-pronged approach, restoring populations in the wild is fundamental to what we do. So it's fundamental to the Safe American Turtle Program. We want to see turtles that have been confiscated from illegal trade end up eventually back into the wild and contributing once again to the wild population. I mean, heck, if a turtle is picked up off the road, or if you take a turtle home from the path and put it in your backyard, or if a turtle is collected from the woods for the illegal wildlife trade, well, that turtle is essentially dead to the population. It's no longer breeding with other turtles and making cute little turtle babies so that that population survives into the future. So we want to make sure that we are able to contribute back to those populations. How do we do it? All right, we're not going to get all down into this nitty gritty. I know your eyes might be going all over the screen right now, but we have a framework that has been built and refined over the last several years, and you can see with all these different arrows and these different bubbles, there's a lot of stakeholders, like I talked about just a few minutes ago, involved, and there's different paths for turtles to go. And I'm going to talk about that here in just a minute. So again, what's cool about the SAFE program is that It involves state and federal law enforcement, conservation nonprofits, governmental and non-governmental, and interest organizations, and zoos, aquariums, nature centers, high schools, colleges, and universities. It is like the one-stop shop for bringing everybody together and saying, we're gonna get these turtles out of the trade. We're gonna get these turtles into a safe environment. We're gonna treat them. We're gonna rehabilitate them. We're gonna keep them safe. And we're gonna do what we can to get these turtles back into the wild where they belong. All right, confiscation and conservation pathway. Folks, again, this is a real photo, just like that one I showed you earlier. These are Florida box turtles that were confiscated back in 2019 in Florida. And this was a very well publicized case. It was in many, many newspapers because what you see here is just the tip of the iceberg. There were thousands of turtles that were moved from Florida to Hong Kong during that time period, and then throughout to other Asian countries. And luckily for these turtles here, the ones that you see in this photo, they were intercepted by law enforcement officers. And these turtles have actually gone back into the wild. And not just that, I have a personal connection because these turtles have gone back into the wild at study sites of friends of mine, friends and colleagues. Okay, you can be both a coworker and a friend. It is true. So let's look at this. This is our pathway. Now, don't worry. In the next slides, I'm going to zoom in so you don't have your eyes bugging out here. But again, we have a pathway to move these turtles from conservation, from confiscation to conservation. So step one, that photo you saw before, turtles in a box. Law enforcement makes contact. So the path does begin with law enforcement. So the law enforcement intercepts a group of turtles that is being smuggled, or maybe they raid a poacher's house and find all the turtles. Well, what do they do? In the past, a law enforcement officer might have a short Rolodex for whom they would call somebody from. I know I've gotten lots of calls from law enforcement officers about confiscated turtles, as has many friends and colleagues of mine. They might call a zoo that's local. They might call a nature center that's local. Well, we wanted again to bring this all into one-stop shop. Okay, so the law enforcement officers now, when a confiscation occurs, they have the ability to make a call to this program, and then immediately we start the process of moving the turtles from where they were intercepted to a care facility. And we do this, oftentimes it might be by car, by van, or sometimes we do actually then have to fly the turtles to a dedicated care facility. Now, I know the turtles have already been through a lot. Maybe they came from Florida and they're intercepted in California, but to get them to the right place at the right time, we do have protocols and we have methods that we can move the turtles much more comfortably for them. You see this box here, okay? This probably wouldn't be a box that a smuggler used, and you can be sure that the turtles are not duct taped in here. You see arrows pointing up so the box doesn't get flipped. It says live animals. You have stickers on here showing that this is from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or a state agency. You can see that there are air holes for the turtles. So this is the safest way for us to be able to move turtles to the next step in the process. So the next step, triage and quarantine. So what does that mean? Well, a lot of the turtles, when they get intercepted, are sick. And that is because all that they have gone through, and they're mixing with other turtles. Think of humans, okay? Whether it's at school or at a rock concert or at a birthday party or at a restaurant, when we're all together, we are sharing germs. And I know we know this very well from the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, turtles have viruses and bacteria that they share as well. And so sometimes, even oftentimes, these turtles can make each other sick. So we want to make sure that the turtles get quarantined, that they get health examinations, and that they get treatment. And then following that, they're going to get genetic testing because that's going to be really important to later on getting them back in the wild. And we do the disease screening. So that is, say there's an animal that has ranavirus, which is, by the way, it's a really scary virus for reptiles and amphibians, and it typically leads to death or mortality. We want to make sure that we get those animals separated from the animals as quickly as possible. If they're symptomatic, just like us, a runny nose, swollen eyes. Now, I know turtles can't cough, but turtles might be opening their mouth like, ah, and gasping for air. Those are symptoms of ranavirus or maybe some other respiratory infection, and we want to separate those turtles immediately. By the way, I got to tell you about this turtle. All right, this is Dorothy right here, and Dorothy is an ornate diamondback terrapin native to the west coast of Florida. And Dorothy was confiscated 2 years ago. The Florida Wildlife Conservation Commission was about to make new changes to the regulations with diamondback terrapins. So at that time, there were people who were like, we got to get wild diamondback terrapins out of here to supply the pet trade before they really crack down. And Dorothy and a group of others like her were part of a confiscation at JFK Airport in New York. And law enforcement personnel contacted me, and the turtles were flown down to Savannah, Georgia, and are now at the Georgia Southern University Armstrong campus, again, involving academic institutions, not just zoos and aquariums. These turtles are now really, really healthy, and we'll be doing genetic testing to try to figure out where they came from. And then we're going to try to get these turtles back in the wild and put radio transmitters on them so we can track where they go and really how good our program is at figuring out where these confiscated turtles came from. So then after all that, and by all that, there's a lot I'm not showing you. There are different phases of quarantine that the turtles basically move through like a conveyor belt. Now, it's not as fast as a conveyor belt. The turtles might stay in for 90 days or 3 months or 6 months here. A lot of it has to do with, is the turtle sick? Is it healthy? Do we know where it came from? Do we not know where it came from? Is there space at that zoo, or do they need to go to another zoo or academic institution or aquarium? But before they're released, we bring them into these long-term holding facilities. And for the turtles, these long-term holding facilities are much, much larger. I mean, look at this beautiful habitat at the Savannah River Ecology Lab, part of the University of Georgia in South Carolina, right along the Savannah River. So this is a large enclosure that recently had a large confiscation of box turtles in it. By the way, all those box turtles were released in the wild, and they are still doing research on the turtles to see just how well they do after release, and are they commingling with the native eastern box turtles? And are they reproducing? Again, effectively contributing to the conservation of wild populations. So they go into these long-term holding facilities. But for some turtles, they're not always a candidate for release. But let's look at the ones who are a candidate for release first. So if they're a candidate for release, we use that genetic testing and we use those disease screenings to figure out where can we put these turtles back that it is appropriate for the population. Okay, so not only is genetics important, so a turtle that has, say, a box turtle from Georgia has evolved to live in this warm coastal plain habitat where they're active for most of the year. Well, that turtle going back into, say, upstate New York, that might not be the best scenario for it. So we really want to get turtles back to as close as we can their point of origin. And sometimes that can be a radius of hundreds of miles, but in the larger scheme of genetics of the populations, that can be an appropriate place. Um, so take a look at the photo you see here. The photo you see here is a strategy that we use not only in the SAFE program, but Turtle Survival Alliance and our partners use throughout the world to restore turtles and tortoises back on the natural landscape. And that could be turtles that were hatched in captivity and head started and then released. Or that can be turtles that were confiscated and rehabilitated and then go through a program such as this and then are reintroduced to the wild. The reason you see walls here in the woods is really for the turtle's safety. What this does is it instills in them site fidelity. And what site fidelity is imagine this. So I, I believe that all of you watching today probably live in some sort of home. Okay. If somebody were to take you from that home and drop you off in some, remote place like Wayways-Kikapo, Manitoba, there's a good chance that you are going to try to find your way home. You might pick up your cell phone and say, "Hey, I'm in this place I've never heard of called Wayways-Kikapo, Manitoba, and I'm trying to get back to Charleston, South Carolina." Well, for turtles, they have that same type of instinct. They want to get back home where they came from. Think about it. Turtles lay eggs either underground or right at the surface of the ground. And in some wild cases, they even lay them underground or on the edge of water, but we won't get too deep into that today. But they hatch out from these eggs as tiny little turtles, and then now they grow for years and years, slowly building out their home range. So it is instilled in them where they live. And we want to be able to create or instill that type of home range, that site fidelity into these turtles that we are reintroducing or translocating back into the wild environment. And eventually, and that might be 3 months or 6 months or a year or 18 months, it really depends on the situation. What we do with these soft release pens is we will then remove a panel or two panels or three panels. It really depends how big the soft release enclosure is. And that allows the turtles to get out on their own. So they can, as they're wandering their enclosure, the soft release enclosure that they've been now in for months, well, they're wandering and they can just go out. It's self-liberation out into the forest. And we have found this strategy to be really, really effective at releasing turtles. So let's look at what happens when we can't release a turtle. And there's numerous reasons why you can't release a turtle. So maybe has an illness that causes it not to be able to be released into a wild population, but it'll still do okay in a captive situation. Maybe it's a turtle who has some sort of anomaly, such as it has a neurologic problem, and it could actually be a good outreach turtle or educational ambassador. There's various circumstances why we can't release turtles in the wild. So what we do is try to still use them for conservation in general. So whether that be, again, educational programs, whether that be research on the turtles themselves, on their interactions, on their metabolism. There's so many different things you can learn from turtles. And even though turtles have been around for a long, long time, like 260 million years, and we've been studying turtles for hundreds of years, there's still so much we're learning all the time about these unique and amazing creatures. And we can also use these turtles for conservation breeding colonies. So say we know the genetics of that turtle. Say we know that it's disease-free, but it still can't go back in the wild. Well, we can pair them up with other turtles just like them of their species. It's kind of like playing turtle matchmaker so that they can breed lay eggs, and the eggs hatch, and we're able to use those little baby turtles to be able to supplement or even start whole new colonies of turtles in the wild. So there's many, many things that we can do with the Safe American Turtle Program that contributes to effective conservation. Now, once the turtles are back out in the wild, how do we know that our program is working? Well, we do research. Take a look at this photo here. This is a little bog turtle. This is actually the smallest turtle in the United States. They only average about 4 inches in length. They live from northern Georgia all the way up into southern New England, and they are a very, very rare species. Most of their habitat has been destroyed. They live in habitat that a lot of people don't even think of as turtle habitat. Or if you do have the turtle habitat on your property, you don't even know the turtles are there because they're so cryptic. They spend most of their time just in muck or going about in between all these thick grasses and other vegetation. And this turtle can even use subterranean burrows that they will travel underground through the subterranean aquifer or where the water is bubbling up from the ground to move about. So this bog turtle has what's called a radio transmitter unit on it. And that transmitter unit is epoxied to the turtle shell. It doesn't hurt it, don't worry. You release the turtle, and then you go out there with a receiver. And it's an antenna, and you're going around. It's like bing, 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 and you're picking up these little pings on the turtles, and eventually you can find where the turtle is. And this is so important to do this post-release monitoring of the turtles because we have to know if our strategy is effective. We have to know if the turtles are alive. We have to know if the turtles are expanding their home ranges. If they are expanding it, to what extent? And we have to know if those turtles, like I talked about with that population in South Carolina, are effectively contributing to the population and its survival. So, again, there are many, many steps, and we continue to work and continue to evolve to adapt our own processes as we take in new information, as we learn new information while we gain the important data. So, the very last thing that I want to say before we get to questions, and I can't wait to answer some of your questions, is what do we all want to see? I know I don't want to see this beautiful species, these spotted turtles, in a container like this. This is not where they belong. I have seen hundreds, maybe thousands of these turtles in the wild. And they're such a gorgeous sight in the wild. There is nothing that can replicate it. This picture of turtles was one that was confiscated in 2017 at Los Angeles International Airport on its way to Hong Kong. These very turtles that you're looking at now are part of our Safe American Turtle Program and are effectively contributing to the conservation of their species. So what do we all want to see? Simple. Wild turtles back in wild habitats. And with that, I want to say thank you to everybody who's watching. Thank you to Elgin High School and the U46 STEM program, the National Biodiversity Teach-In, all the students that work so hard to make this happen, and for all of you turtle lovers out there, and I am sure that is every single one of you, because who can't love a turtle? Thank you very much. Let's get to some questions, because I look forward to it.
Okay, so our first question is, what is the difference between turtles and tortoises?
What is the difference between turtles and tortoises? That is an excellent question. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. So, tortoises are turtles, but turtles are not tortoises. So, we're going to break it down simply that way. A tortoise, a sea turtle, a terrapin, a freshwater turtle, a terrestrial turtle, they're all turtles. They're all what we call testudines or chelonians. But tortoises, a long time ago, on this branch that we know of as a clade, they went their own way and they evolved for a terrestrial lifestyle. Tortoises might have a dome shell. They can have a relatively moderate shell, or they can even, like the pancake tortoise, have a flat shell. So the main difference when it really gets down to it is that tortoises have evolved for a terrestrial or land-dwelling lifestyle. Now, does that mean they don't like the water? No, they love to take water baths or mud wallows, but swimming is not really a forte of theirs. Excellent question.
All right, our next question is how can we protect turtles and tortoise habitats?
That's an excellent question and something I think of every day. I go to bed every night thinking about protecting turtle habitats. I wake up thinking about turtle habitats. It consumes me. Um, but so, how do we do this? This is one of the most difficult and complex questions. I'm going to tell you why. And you're like, Jordan, we knew you were going to tell us why. That's why you're here. So, turtles and tortoises, when they're smuggled in illegal trade, that is something more tangible. You know, you can make an arrest, you can make an interception of a group of turtles, and we can get them into something like the SAFE program. But how do you protect all of these habitats that all the time are getting destroyed by developments, new roads? Anytime a road goes in somewhere, that is much like the clade we're talking about of animal evolution. A road goes in somewhere, and then new roads branch out, development, and we see this all across the landscape. Okay, so I've told you about that. So how do we stop it? Well, it's really hard. But there are organizations out there that are dedicated to habitat preservation, like the Sierra Club, like the Center for Biological Diversity, the Nature Conservancy. These are all organizations that are not only devoted to wildlife, but the habitats they're in. And the Turtle Survival Alliance, we also do habitat protection and creating reserves for turtles. But what is something simple you can do? Well, it's easy. Let's take part of your yard. Let's say you have a yard, okay? Take part of your yard and plant grasses, flowers, shrubs, trees that allow your yard to essentially rewild and make wildlife habitat. Your yard, your house, your apartment, your condo was once wildlife habitat. So the simplest thing you can do is bring wildlife habitat back. And that can be a quarter of your yard, half of your yard. If you really want to drive your parents crazy, make it the whole yard. But that is something that we can all do. And I know right out that window out there, half of my yard is rewilded into native landscape. And it has butterflies and bees and birds and toads and turtles. All right, great question. Next one. I'm going to take a sip of my delicious protein coffee drink.
All right, for the next question, it asks, why are turtles smuggled? For their shells to eat, to be pets? It's very upsetting to me.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you are it moves you. That's what we need is everybody to be moved by this issue. So turtles are smuggled for numerous reasons. People eat turtles. All around the world, turtles are oftentimes seen as either subsistence, which would mean uh, a turtle is just a normal part of living, like you're eating a turtle for lunch or dinner, or it could be some culinary cuisine. People are going to a restaurant and ordering turtle soup or turtle kebabs even. So people do eat turtles. The other reason that they're smuggled is for what's called traditional medicine. There are markets out there that take turtles, and I know this is very, very sad, but it will take their body parts, especially their shells, and turn it into powders or liquids that people will drink or consume because it is supposed to be able to cure all sorts of ailments. There is no scientific evidence to show that this is the case, and this is the case for many, many species of wildlife, from elephants to pangolins to tigers to turtles. Animals are smuggled for the traditional medicine trade. And then the one that I've talked about the most here is the pet trade. And the pet trade, again, it's a billion-dollar industry. Every country around the world, you're typically going to find people with wildlife as pets, especially turtles as pets. Now, I do want to have a little disclaimer here. We'll put a little, where's my corner of my screen? There we go. Ding! Okay, that means there's a disclaimer. So I'm not saying that I am against turtles as pets. I am saying that I am against wild turtles that were living in the wild, taken out of those beautiful homes and brought into captivity to be a pet. Many people breed turtles. So there are avenues if people really want to have a turtle as a pet to get them legally and to get them responsibly. The most irresponsible thing would be to take a turtle out of its wild habitat and bring it into, say, an aquarium or a box or some other type of enclosure at home. Really good question.
All right, so our next question is from Elgin High School. It's Brandon Cardozo. Did you have a pet turtle when you were younger?
Boy, did I. So like my last disclaimer, so I've actually kept turtles most of my life. I think I got my first pet turtle when I was about 4 or 5 years old. I don't remember his name now, but I bet it was something pretty awesome. Um, but I still have turtles to this day. Now, the turtles that I have now represent a numerous amount of species, and I use those turtles for educational outreach. Everyone's like, "Oh, cool, Jordan. Well, so glad you didn't bring one on the show here today." Okay, there's a reason for it. It is winter time. It has been cooler out recently, and so all of the turtles that I use for educational outreach are brumating, which is reptilian hibernation. They're at the bottom of their pond, just thinking deep thoughts or doing astrophysics. They're buried in the leaves or the dirt or soil, thinking about, what is Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce going to do next? I mean, who really knows? But that is why I did not bring any of them out today inside because they are all down and slumbering for the winter. But getting back to the point, I did have turtles when I was young. I still have them now. What do I mean when I was young? I'm still young, people. Okay? Don't believe what you've heard. All right, next question. That's a good one.
Okay. The next question is from Ethan, and he would like to know how many turtles are smuggled each year.
How many turtles are smuggled each year? Tens and tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands. This is no small problem, Ethan. So from the United States, thousands. But then you think about all the other countries in the world. My friend and colleague, again, you can be both, who lives in India, Arunima, just a couple years ago, she triaged, rehabilitated, and released, I kid you not, 28,000 turtles that were being smuggled. And that was just from one smuggling route from Lucknow, India to West Bengal, India to Calcutta. So that just shows you the scope of it. Think about, one person and the rest of the team handling that many turtles. And that's what happens during these confiscations. You will get sometimes thousands of turtles in a single confiscation. And those are all being shipped, whether it's within the nation, which is domestic, or internationally. and then conservation groups and veterinarians and law enforcement personnel, we're the ones to get involved to help these animals out. And when these confiscations happen, and again, talking about the numbers, thousands of animals, think about all of the resources that it takes to go into being able to provide rapid response and long-term care and eventual release into the wild, or in some cases, like I was talking about, keeping that turtle for the duration of its lifetime. There are considerable resources that go into this. So excellent question, Ethan. All right, next up.
All right, so our last question is from Mr. Devine, and it is, do you work at all with the turtle meat industry? Can it be sustainable, and have you ever had snapper soup?
All right, who planted this question? I feel like this is like putting me on the spot here. By the way, speaking about, all right, so I want to show you something. See this turtle right here with the little black mustache and red cap? That is called the painted terrapin. It lives in Southeast Asia. And right now, on my phone, while we're here, I'm getting a call from my colleague, Joko Ganturo, who lives in Sumatra, Indonesia, where they have a conservation project for that turtle. So how serendipitous. They're about 12 hours different. So I'll just tell Joko to go to bed. I'm busy. I'm busy talking turtle for Ground Turtle Day. Okay, let's get to the question. Sustainable turtles. So yes, there are turtle farms across the United States. There are turtle farms in many other countries. China has thousands of turtle farms where, just like chickens and cows and pigs and other animals that many people see as just the things we eat, the meat we eat, turtles are also just another one of those items. A lot of this just has to do with culture. I mean, if you think about it philosophically, like, a turtle is an animal, pig is an animal, a cow is an animal, a chicken is an animal. So what causes different cultures to view animals differently? In some places, they actually, they worship cows. They don't eat cows. Pigs, they don't eat pig. In most of the United States, we don't eat turtle. But are there areas of the United States where turtles are eaten? Absolutely. Have I tried turtle soup? Yes, I have. I'm not going to skirt around that. I'm not going to lie to you. Okay. Jordan Gray lays it all out on the table. So I have tried snapping turtle soup because one of the best ways for me to be a conservationist is to be able to know all the different sides. So when I get a question like this, I can appropriately answer it. So turtle farming is something that in some ways can help relieve the stress on wild populations, because the turtles are being used for such things as pets and food, and the traditional medicine industries from those turtle farms. But on the flip side of it, we've also seen where these turtle farms will be used to launder wild turtles through into the illegal trade. So the biggest thing is it just comes down to personal preference, and it comes down to, again, making sure that things are sustainable and that things are ethically sourced. All right, do I have any other questions? I see that my hour is up, so now my tears shall begin to fall like the rains over Africa.
Thank you so much, Jordan Gray, for your lovely presentation and taking the time to share all that you do with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Joe Milanovich, so make sure you guys tune in there. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Definitely tune in to Joe. See you all next year.
Yes, see you next year.
All right, bye.